Don't come near me. Those were the last words I heard from her mouth before the front door slammed shut behind me. No explanation, no tears, just those 4 words that cut deeper than any argument we'd ever had. I remember standing on the porch that night, gripping the railing so hard my hands ached, trying to figure out what just happened. The thing is, I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I felt like I'd become a ghost in my own life. For weeks, she'd been looking at me like I was a stranger. No, worse, like I was invisible. I'd cook dinner, clean up, ask about her day, and all I'd get were these flat, empty replies. Then, that night, I reached out to touch her hand while she was sitting at the table, and she recoiled like my touch burned her. "Don't come near me," she said. So I walked out. No suitcase, no plan, just pure instinct. For days, I didn't look back. I ignored the buzzing of my phone, the short texts that eventually turned into long paragraphs. But then something strange happened. The tone of her messages shifted. They weren't cold anymore. They were frantic. She wrote things like, "Please pick up, I need you." And, "I made a mistake, Caleb. I'm sorry." And now, she's falling apart. I can hear it in her voicemails. Her voice cracking, her words slurred with tears. It should feel like revenge, like payback for all the times I begged her to talk to me. But instead, it feels like I'm watching someone drown while my feet are chained to the dock. There's something in her voice that scares me. Something she's not telling me. I wasn't planning to listen to any of her voicemails. In fact, I swore I wouldn't. But at 2 a.m., lying on that pathetic air mattress in my friend's spare room, I caved. My phone screen was glowing like it knew I was weak. There were 8 voicemails from her. I hit play on the latest one, and what I heard made my blood run cold. She wasn't crying. No, it was worse. She was whispering, her voice shaking like she was hiding in a dark corner of the house. "Caleb, something's wrong. I can't explain it on the phone. Just, please, come back. I'm scared." Then, just before the voicemail cut off, there was this strange noise, like someone knocking on a door in the background. A sharp, deliberate knock. I replayed that part over and over, trying to figure out if it was just my imagination. It wasn't. My first thought was that she'd lost it completely, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of whatever toxic mess we'd turned our marriage into. But there was something about the way she said, "I'm scared," that didn't sound like guilt. It sounded real, like she was trapped in something I couldn't see. I couldn't sleep after that. At 4 a.m., I was pacing the kitchen, half drunk on cheap coffee, convincing myself to stay away. She told you not to come near her. She meant it. But then why was she calling like this? Why did her voice sound like she was holding back a scream? By sunrise, I was already in my car, engine running, hands trembling on the steering wheel. I didn't know what I'd find when I got there, but I knew I had to go back. When I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was how quiet everything was. Too quiet. Mary Ann's car was parked at a crooked angle, one door slightly open like she'd been in a rush or distracted. I sat there in my car for a full minute, staring at the front door, trying to gather the courage to walk in. It was still early morning, the kind of pale, gray light that makes everything look colder than it really is. I kept thinking about that voicemail, about the knock in the background. Who was knocking? Was it someone at the door or inside the house? I didn't knock. I still had my key, and I slipped it into the lock like I had 1,000 times before. The house felt different the moment I stepped inside. It was messy, but not in the way Marian usually leaves things. This wasn't laundry on the chair messy. This was frantic, uneven, like someone had torn through the living room looking for something. A lamp was tipped over, one of the couch cushions was on the floor, and there was this faint smell of something burnt. "Marianne." My voice sounded too loud. No answer. I walked through each room slowly, my heart pounding like I was about to catch an intruder. Then I saw her phone on the kitchen counter. The screen was cracked, the voicemail app still open, as if she'd been about to call me again and dropped it mid-step. That's when I heard it, footsteps. Not from outside. From upstairs. I froze, my mind flipping through every horrible possibility. Was she here? Was someone else here? My first instinct was to leave, to run back to my car and pretend I hadn't come at all. But something pulled me forward, up the stairs, toward the master bedroom. The door was half open. I pushed it gently, my breath stuck in my throat, and what I saw, I still can't get it out of my head. The bedroom looked like a storm had torn through it. The curtains were half ripped from the rail, drawers pulled out, clothes scattered everywhere like someone had gone through them in a panic. And on the floor, right by the bed, there was a wine glass shattered into tiny, sharp pieces. I stood in the doorway for a few seconds, just trying to take it all in, when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Marianne's scarf, the one I gave her last winter, was tied around the bedpost, like it had been yanked there too hard. Marianne, I said again, quieter this time. My voice felt like it barely existed in that room. I walked in slowly, my shoes crunching on the broken glass. That's when I spotted something on the nightstand. It was an envelope, my name scrawled on the front in her handwriting. Only it looked shaky, rushed, like she'd written it in fear. I picked it up, but before I could open it, I heard something behind me. A soft creak. The closet door. I turned, every muscle in my body tensed. The door was slightly open, and for some insane reason, I reached for it instead of running. I pushed it open, expecting to find her hiding in there, crying or, I don't know, anything but what I actually saw. The closet was empty, except for a single shoe, Marianne's heel, lying on its side, and a dark smear on the carpet right next to it. At first I thought it was dirt, but when I crouched down, I realized it was dried blood. My hands started shaking. I pulled out my phone, thinking about calling the police, but just as I did, I heard something downstairs. A door slamming. Someone else was in the house. I dropped the envelope and bolted out of the room, nearly tripping on the stairs in my rush. I could hear heavy footsteps moving quickly across the kitchen floor, and for one terrifying moment, I saw a shadow, too tall, too broad to be hers, disappearing out the back door. By the time I reached the kitchen, the door was wide open, and whoever it was, they were gone. I stood in that kitchen for what felt like forever, my mind struggling to process what just happened. The morning light was spilling through the windows, making the scene feel unreal, like it was a dream I needed to wake up from. But the open back door, the faint smell of someone's cologne lingering in the air, and the adrenaline surging in my veins told me this was all too real. My first instinct was to run outside and chase whoever had been there. But where would I even start? They were gone. The only thing left was the silence of the house and my own ragged breathing. I forced myself back upstairs, my hands shaking as I picked up the envelope from the floor where I dropped it. The sight of my name, Caleb, in Marianne's handwriting made my chest tighten. I ripped it open, praying for answers, but what I found only made things worse. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written hastily and smudged with what looked like tears. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't fix it. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I'm sorry for the way I treated you, but I was trying to keep you safe. Please, don't look for me. It's too dangerous. I read it over and over again, my heart pounding harder each time. Trying to keep me safe? Safe from what? Or from who? And what the hell did she mean by, I couldn't fix it? I wanted to scream. Nothing made sense. I searched the room again, tearing through the drawers she'd already emptied, but there was nothing. No wallet, no keys, no clue about where she might have gone. Only that smear of blood by the closet and the overturned wine glass told me something violent had happened here. Something she didn't want me to see. Then I remembered the voicemails. I played the last one again, this time with the envelope in my hand, and something clicked. Right before she said, I'm scared, there was a faint voice in the background, a man's voice. I turned up the volume, listening carefully, and I swear I heard someone whisper her name. At that moment, I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait. I needed to find her, whether she wanted me to or not. I couldn't ignore the fact that she might be in real danger. I grabbed the keys to my car, but as I stepped out onto the porch, I noticed something I'd missed earlier, a small scrap of paper wedged under the doormat. It had 2 words written on it in messy block letters. Too late. I stood on that porch, holding the scrap of paper with those 2 words, too late, and felt like my entire reality had been shattered. My first thought was that someone was messing with me, some twisted prank to push me over the edge. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a joke. Whoever had been in the house left that message for me, and it wasn't just a warning. It felt like a challenge, like they were daring me to figure out what was really going on. I couldn't just stand there. I pocketed the note, got into my car, and drove aimlessly for an hour, my mind racing through every conversation, every argument I'd ever had with Marianne. Had she been hiding something from me all this time? I kept thinking about the way she said, "Don't come near me," and how cold and final it had sounded. Was she trying to protect me from someone else? Or was I just the fool who never realized she had another life running parallel to ours? Eventually, I found myself parked outside her office building. It wasn't planned. I think I just wanted to see something familiar, someplace that could give me answers. But when I walked in, I realized she hadn't been to work in over a week. Her desk looked untouched, and one of her co-workers, a woman named Teresa, gave me a look that made my stomach turn. "I thought she was with you," Teresa said. "She told us she was taking time off for personal issues." I tried to ask more questions, but I could tell Teresa didn't know much, or maybe didn't want to know. So I left, my frustration growing with every step. I drove back home, and when I walked through the door, the house felt even emptier than before. I went upstairs again, scanning the bedroom like maybe I'd missed something. And that's when I found it. Wedged between the bed and the wall was a small black notebook I'd never seen before. I sat on the floor, flipping through the pages, my heart hammering with each line. Most of it was nonsense, scribbled notes, to-do lists, reminders. But then I saw it. A list of names, some crossed out, some underlined. Next to one name, Derek, she'd written, "Never tell Caleb." My blood ran cold. Who the hell was Derek? As I sat there staring at the notebook, I felt something shift in me. This wasn't just about finding Marian anymore. Someone had dragged us both into something bigger and darker than I could have imagined. And if this Derek had something to do with the shadow I saw in the house, then I needed to find him before it was, as the note said, too late. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through every one of her old emails, every message I could access, looking for the name Derek. And just when I was about to give up, I found an email chain buried in her archives. The last message, dated 3 days ago, was chillingly simple. "You think you can run? You owe me." I didn't know what she owed or what she had gotten herself into, but I knew one thing. I was going to find this Derek, even if it meant tearing my entire life apart in the process. I didn't know where to start. All I had was a name, Derek, and a vague threat hidden in an email that felt like it was written in a language of fear I hadn't learned yet. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I actually knew about Marianne's life outside of the version she allowed me to see. We lived together, shared a bed, shared years of memories, and yet, in this moment, she felt like a stranger who'd been living a double life under my roof. That thought kept chewing at me as I dug deeper. The first clue came from a phone bill. I'd forgotten I still had access to our joint account, and after scrolling through weeks of call history, one number popped out. It wasn't saved under a name, but it appeared almost every night, sometimes after midnight. My stomach tightened as I copied it down. I didn't call right away. Instead, I traced it online, and what I found made my skin crawl. It belonged to a bar, an old, run-down place on the outskirts of town. I drove there the next day, convinced I'd find some trace of her. The place looked like something out of a forgotten film. Paint peeling off the wooden siding, broken neon signs buzzing faintly. I stepped inside, and the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke hit me like a wave. A few regulars were hunched over the bar, all of them turning to look at me like they knew I didn't belong. I walked up to the bartender, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper voice. "I'm looking for someone," I said. "Tall guy, goes by Derek. You know him?" Her expression froze for just a second before she smiled. "Too thin, too fake. Never heard of him," she said, and went back to wiping down glasses. But I could tell she was lying. So I sat down at the far end of the bar and waited. Hours passed. People came and went. Just when I was starting to think I'd wasted an entire afternoon, someone slid onto the stool next to me. He didn't look at me. He just sat there, ordered a whiskey, and then muttered in a low voice, "You shouldn't be here asking about Derek." I turned to look at him. He was older, maybe late 40s, with a scar running across his cheek like an ugly reminder of something violent. "Who are you?" I asked. He laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that meant something was funny. "Someone who's still alive because I know when to stay quiet." "You? You're going to end up buried if you keep poking around where you don't belong." Before I could respond, he stood, downed his drink in one gulp, and walked out, leaving me sitting there with my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I knew I should leave, but I couldn't. I stayed until the place started to thin out. Then, just as I was about to give up, the bartender slipped me a small, folded napkin. There was a single address written on it. She didn't say a word, just gave me a look that made my blood run cold. It wasn't a friendly gesture. It was the kind of look that says, "This is as far as I'm willing to go. Don't come back here." I drove to the address immediately, even though it was already close to midnight. It was a warehouse on the edge of town, the kind of place where secrets rot and nobody asks questions. The building was dark except for a single light flickering over a side door. I didn't think twice. I parked down the street, crept up to the door, and pressed my ear against it. What I heard inside made my chest tighten. It was Marianne's voice. She was crying. I don't know where I found the courage, but hearing Marianne's voice from behind that warehouse door snapped something inside me. I kicked it open, expecting chaos, violence, maybe even the end of everything. Instead, I found her sitting on a chair in the middle of the room, her hands shaking, eyes wide with fear. Across from her stood a man, Derek. He wasn't holding a weapon or looking like some hardened criminal. He just looked broken. "Caleb," Marianne gasped, her voice raw. "You shouldn't be here." "Too bad," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'm not leaving without you." Derek turned to me, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't anger but pain. He raised his hands like he wanted to prove he wasn't going to hurt anyone. "This isn't what you think," he said. "She's been trying to help me. She's been trying to fix something I screwed up years ago. I lost control." I was ready to fight him, but Marianne stood and moved between us. "Caleb, listen. Derek isn't what he looks like. He's my stepbrother. We were trying to clear a debt he got into years ago. He came to me for help, and I didn't want you involved because I was ashamed. I pushed you away because I didn't want you to get hurt." The air left my lungs all at once. I looked at Derek again, seeing him differently now. He looked desperate, but not dangerous. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked her. She swallowed hard, tears streaking her face. "Because I didn't want you to see me like this, lying, sneaking around. I wanted to protect you, even if it meant you hated me." The tension in the room melted into silence. I stepped closer to her, my anger dissolving with each step. I put my arms around her, and she didn't flinch this time. She just held me, her head pressed against my chest, as if she'd been waiting for this moment to finally let go. We left the warehouse together. Derek stayed behind, promising that whatever trouble he'd gotten into, he'd handle it himself from now on. I don't know if I believe him, but that night, as I drove us home, Marianne reached over and took my hand like she hadn't in months. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "You won't," I said, and I meant it. The house was still a mess when we got back, the broken glass still on the floor, but somehow it felt like a place we could rebuild. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't angry or lost. I was just relieved. That night, as we sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by the wreckage of the past few weeks, I realized something important. Sometimes love isn't about being perfect or always understanding each other. Sometimes it's just about showing up when everything falls apart. And I knew I was never walking away from her again.